Good Monday evening, everybody. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandajis. A double dose video today. I wanted to get an update out to you because there are some changes that have come on in with some most recent advisories on both Hurricane Sally and Hurricane Paulette. There are two other named storms out there, Teddy and Vicky, but both of those do not pose any threat, or immediate threat at least, to any land masses. So we're going to focus just on the hurricanes out there so far for this update. A brief look at what's going on out in the Atlantic Basin. Extremely active, some could call it hyperactive, with 5 named systems out there in the basin right now. We have Sally, we have Paulette, we have Teddy, Vicky, and what remains of what was Tropical Storm Renee, weakened to a tropical depression, now is actually just a remnant low. So really technically only 4 named systems out there right now. So we're up to Vicky. We have one more name to go, Wilfred, before we are done with the list of names. 21 names gone. What happens after that? The Greek alphabet gets put into play, and that's only happened once back in 2005. Here's the updates I want to get out to you. Brand new advisory coming out at 5 o'clock, 4 p.m. Central Time there. Sally has strengthened a little bit more. We're up to 100-mile-per-hour winds with gusts up to 120. That puts it at a Category 2 hurricane with those winds at 100 miles an hour. Infrared satellite imagery here. We kind of had a bubbly blob of convective activity here for most of the day. Now we're starting to see a curl show in that infrared satellite imagery. And as you switch things up and look at the visible before the sun's getting ready to go on down, you can actually see there may be some indications of an eye starting to form. But Sally also did something interesting today. It satisfied the criteria for rapid intensification. The definition, according to the National Hurricane Center, is an increase in maximum sustained winds of around 30 knots, at least 30 knots, which is around 35 miles per hour in 24 hours. When we look back at all the advisories, remember yesterday, Sally was struggling as a tropical storm with persistent wind shear kind of coming in out of the west to southwest, bringing everything in out of the pushing everything off to the side to the east. At 4 p.m. yesterday, we had sustained winds of 60 miles an hour, a tropical storm. At the 4 p.m. advisory today, we are up to 100 miles an hour. So that's an increase of 40 miles per hour in sustained winds, satisfying and beating out the criteria, the minimum criteria for rapid intensification. Here's a look at the visible satellite imagery before we're getting ready for that sun to go down. We'll have to go back over to infrared throughout the overnight. You can see there in the last couple of frames, maybe some shadows from some of the taller convective clouds, but there could be certainly an eye beginning to form out there, and especially with its intensity strengthening, that's not out of left field by any means at all. So here's how it looks on radar imagery coming in out of Mobile, seeing the banding kind of straddling the coastline here near Pensacola and over towards Mobile Bay. And some of these heaviest winds or strongest winds are going to be in some of these bands that are the brightest. So the heavy rain and strongest winds lurking just offshore now and eventually heading over towards Biloxi in the next 24 hours. This is a very slow-moving storm that you can see here from the forecast track. There are some changes in this as well with the 5 o'clock advisory. So 100-mile-per-hour winds, once again, it is slowing down. We're down to 6 miles per hour. It's forward speed. That is crawling. You could outrun this storm pretty much. Category 2 storm, stronger as we get towards late tonight, early tomorrow morning. 110-mile-per-hour winds at that point. Notice the distance it covers in that amount of time. Not very far at all. We go a little bit farther out. Here we are tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. Still kind of plateauing in terms of strength. It may very well be a little bit stronger than this as it's still over some warm ocean waters. So this is a little bit conservative. We could be a little bit stronger than this. We could be pushing towards a Category 3 major hurricane at that point. It takes a turn north. We're waiting for wind shear to kick on in from the west-southwest, and that should tilt the system enough and start to drive it off towards the north a little bit as well. Timing out that turn to the north is the most difficult part of this forecast. At 2 a.m. Wednesday, we are still a Category 2 storm, 105-mile-per-hour winds, and then as it lifts north and inland, it does weaken. It gets taken away from its fuel source, and then further weakens and falls apart as it moves over the southeastern United States, raining itself out. So what changes happened here? There is a slight shift off towards the east. That has big implications for areas to the west of the storm that are going to see much less in terms of the wind and the rain. Here's a look at the forecast wind field as we go forward from here. That yellow bubble you're seeing is where you'll find tropical storm force winds sustained at 39 miles per hour or greater. In this orange bubble, you'll find 58 miles per hour, and then hurricane force winds is in this red little egg there as we go a little bit farther inland. So Biloxi area starting to see that heaviest winds right here. Dauphin Island, Mobile Bay, 75 mile per hour sustained winds, hurricane force as this moves inland. Notice the sharp cutoff as you get farther back towards the west. You're always going to find the strongest winds, most amount of rain, most damage on the east-northeast side of that storm center as it lifts northwards. And then, of course, it pulls away from the ocean, its fuel source. The wind field will start to shrink a little bit, at least the strongest winds. The overall wind field will expand, gaining latitude. So also has implications for the areas that will see the most rain. Look at this sharp cutoff through New Orleans. Points east, well east, could see close to 2 feet of rainfall. Near Mobile Bay, Pensacola area, over a foot of rain. But you go back west and there's a sharp cutoff there, 1-2 inches of rain at most as you get closer to New Orleans. So that's some good news for that area, not so good for areas farther off to the east. All right, let's touch briefly here on Paulette. It did impact land, Bermuda, landfall, 10th time it's ever happened since 1851, so extremely rare. Was pretty much right over it in the middle of the night last night. Now it's sailing to the north. And what's interesting here is as it's moving north, you'd think it'd start to weaken, encountering some cooler ocean waters. In fact, it is forecast to strengthen more and become a major hurricane. As the sun goes down on the system, you can see it's still very healthy looking and well-defined eye and strengthening as it moves north up to a Category 3. Winds getting up as high as 125 miles per hour. Look at this, still a Category 1 hurricane as it heads towards the North Atlantic. So very, very unusual there with Paulette. That gives you a feel of the environmental conditions over the entire Atlantic are pretty conducive for tropical or subtropical activity. All right, that's the latest on this video update for you. We'll have more tomorrow morning, and of course, I'll see you back here tomorrow afternoon. If you have a question in between, don't be afraid to ask. Find me on social media, Facebook, on Instagram, or on Twitter. Enjoy your evening.